in because we invariably get people coming in late.
But
we're recording now and we're doing a transcript. So here we go.
Brilliant. So like cortisol, we call it the stress hormone, and it's something that we fear, but it is in fact essential and it's imperative to life. Essentially, it does many things beyond being known as a stress hormone. It increases glucose availability in the bloodstream. It inhibits insulin. It suppresses inflammation, regulates proteins, carbs, and fats. It supports our cardiovascular health, which is crazy, isn't it? Because all of these things so far, we believe that cortisol is detrimental, but it just goes to show that these things, just like insulin, we demonize insulin, but these things are imperative. It maintains blood pressure. It's what allows us to create and make gluconeogenesis, which is the creation of glucose through non-glucose substrates like protein and lipid. 80% of this action is elicited by cortisol. We can do it via other means like human growth and glucagon, but it's primarily driven by cortisol. So just imagine if we didn't have any cortisol, then as carnivores, we would have problems, which is a problem within the carnivore space, by the way, and maybe we'll get onto this as we go. Cortisol helps with memory, immune response, and so on and so forth. So look, these things are not all bad things. Cortisol isn't the demon that it's made out to be, and in fact, it's incredibly useful for life and human survival. Now, this is the process that it typically goes through. So it begins in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus will release corticotropin releasing hormone, which will signal the pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, then the adrenals to release adrenaline first, and then followed quickly by cortisol. And this is really important. This is something that will take effect if our life depends on it. For example, if we're being chased and we need the flight or fright response, it can help us with athletic performance and all the other things that we've just listed on the previous slide. So this is what happens in a normal circumstance. It follows this flow, and when this happens, then this reaction itself creates what's called a negative feedback loop, which basically are these two arrows there. It sends a signal to the pituitary and another one to the hypothalamus to stop production. So once it's made the production of cortisol and adrenaline, it tells the body to stop production. And this is what controls these mechanisms. Where are we? Let's go over there. And then this leads on to something called gas. So this was a line of thinking that was created, I think it was 1932, and it basically stands for general adaptation syndrome, which is the process of three things. So the first stage of cortisol production is the alarm stage. So the body recognizes exactly what we just said, a stressor. So it initiates the flight response. And again, if we're training and we want that response for to run or to lift weights in the gym, this is where cortisol can come in handy. This leads to the adaptation phase, which is resistance. So the body adapts, or at least attempts to adapt to this ongoing stressor by sustaining cortisol and other hormones to maintain the equilibrium within the body. Now, up to this point, these things are perfectly normal. The body does. This is how training works, by the way. We get in, we lift some weights, we do some sprinting, or whatever your go-to is. And this is the resistance part. This is the body training itself to maintain and utilize cortisol and process these pathways effectively and efficiently. And the more we train, the more adapted that we become to these stresses. So this is why training works. And this is why being in stressed situations for a set period of time can help. This is why, like public speaking, huge stressor for me. It's my worst fear. And in fact, I tried to face my fear when I was a purchasing manager for an electrical engineering company. I volunteered to give a speech and I froze and made a complete dick of myself. I thought face my fear and it would all come to fruition, and it didn't. It put me off public speaking, which is the opposite to what I'm trying to explain. But my point is, I persevered. Every time that I done this public speaking, I managed to adapt, and I became more resistant. And yes, I still get the bump in cortisol. I still get all of the nerves and all of the. It still scares me. Public speaking petrifies me, but I've managed to upregulate these pathways, and it's allowed me to adapt and build this resistance. Now, what we don't want to happen is this exhaustion, which is what happens. This is what happens to us on a daily basis for a multitude of reasons. Persistent stressors deplete the resources, leading to damage to the negative feedback loop. Now, when we damage the negative feedback loop, where are we? There. So now there's no feedback. This leads to positive feedback. So there's no negative feedback. It leads to positive feedback. This positive feedback drives cortisol through the roof. Now, when cortisol goes through the roof, this affects our diurnal rhythm, our sleep-wake cycle. It causes muscle breakdown, weight gain. So all of these, this is why we fear cortisol. And it's to do with the overexpression. Poor skin health, acne, because cortisol is important for the production of sebum, the oily substance in the skin. Acne, IBS, decreased libido, poor immune system, depression and anxiety, pituitary damage. Now, you need to remember these. You need to remember depression, anxiety, pituitary damage, because this is what we're going to go on to shortly. Low cortisol. So elevated cortisol can lead to low cortisol, which in my opinion is possibly even more damaging, because especially for us being carnivore, because if now we cannot produce cortisol, now we're not producing glucose efficiently, which is essential for carnivore. So there are caveats to this, but there are things we can do, and this is why we're doing this cortisol presentation, is to enable you to see the signs of pituitary damage, which I have suffered with personally, by the way, which is why I've gone into studying this in particular. So remember the pituitary damage. Now, this isn't my own graphic, for full disclosure. I've completely stolen this. This was the last piece I wanted to fill the puzzle, and I didn't have time to make this graphic myself. But if you look at the hypothalamus, as we said, signals the pituitary, which is divided into two parts mainly. We know them as anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. Now, when you look at scientific papers, they're called something different. This is called the hypophysis, and the anterior is known as the Aden hypothesis, and the posterior is the neurohypothesis. So when you see these mentions, this is all it means, is posterior and anterior. Now, the anterior pituitary, look at what this deals with. The anterior pituitary signals human growth hormone, which is essential for bone production, muscles, and organs. So again, this is essential. The production of prolactin, essential for luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, which stimulates the ovaries and the testes to produce estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Let's spit that out. The adrenals to perform what we've just looked at, the HPA axis. Thyroid stimulating hormone, which allows us to create thyroid hormone. The posterior pituitary, or the neurohypophysis, vasopressin, ADH, which is key to blood pressure. And oxytocin, again, this leads to milk production, and it's to do with birthing and breast and uterus. So these things are essential. If we were to damage this pituitary, then everything else falls apart. And I'm talking about dyslipidemia and dysregulated cortisol, increased triglycerides. So quite literally, let me go back because I want to show you this again. If we do this, all of these become affected. So this is why cortisol management is critically important, and it gets overlooked time and time again. People will say, "Oh, I'm stressed," and we're quick enough to just to dust it off, palm it off, and say, "Oh, shape up, get yourself together." Cortisol is a crippler. And this is why it's so severely important, because if we leave it unchecked, it quite literally damages everything else in the body. Once the pituitary is damaged, everything downstream is affected. Now, this has a roll-on effect, and I want to show you that this has just shown a cascade of events and how it's damaged this. But I'm going to go in to show you how it affects how we eat, how we think, how we feel, because it has a massive implication on what we eat, when we eat, and how we eat, and so on and so forth. Because elevated cortisol levels decrease dopamine and serotonin. Now, dopamine and serotonin are these are essential. The neurotransmitters, we are hardwired to chase dopamine and serotonin, which means that if we do not make them naturally, then we will chase them. And we will chase them through a number of means, which we'll go on to now. But one of them is sugar. We can release dopamine via a sugar injection. I don't mean quite literally. Well, we can, but I mean consuming. So sugar releases dopamine into the mesolimbic pathway, which is the reward pathway. It gives us pleasure in the same way that drugs do, because sugar is a drug. It increases the amount of dopamine in the brain, but by doing so, it downregulates the dopamine receptor, which means that we have a little sugar bump, or a dopamine bump, and then it crashes, and quite often it ends below baseline. So what do? We reach for more sugar, and then it bumps again. And this is because we're downregulating this pathway, the bump is less. So now we're looking for more and more and more. And this is what we go for. We aim for the carbohydrates because we know the carbohydrates break down into sugar. And it has massive implications because sugar blocks the prefrontal cortex. It blocks our brain's ability to make sensible decisions. So this is why we will wake early hours of the morning and drive to McDonald's or a local garage, which I've done many times, might I add, for my sugar fix. It stops us from making sensible decisions. It makes us do, I don't know if I'm going to swear anyway, it makes us do dumb shit, essentially. So this is why, and all of this has just come from cortisol, by the way, and through other things. But this is why cortisol is so important. It also affects the hippocampus because the hippocampus is responsible for memory formation, navigation, and it helps us with continuing to build neurons and rewiring pathways and so on and so forth. And sugar adversely impacts the hippocampus and longer-term brain structure. So this is something that damages the brain. It makes us forget the damage. So basically, we'll reach for sugar and we'll do dumb shit, and then we'll think, I'm never doing that again. And the next day, we go and do it again and again. And all the while, these bumps of dopamine and serotonin are becoming less effective, so we're eating more and more sugar. And I've put grains in there as well because grains are sugar. Grains are carbohydrates, incredibly damaging. I'm not going to go into how they damage the intestinal lining, but they're not fit for human consumption. But grains, fruits, and vegetables, which are carbohydrates, they do break down into sugar. They're treated with a compound called glyphosate. Glyphosate is a herbicide that is linked to cancer, and it's been slapped with a Prop 65 warning in the state of California. But it also blocks the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway is how we produce our aromatic amino acids. So right at the bottom there, tryptophan, tyrosine, phenylalanine. We block our body's ability to make these aromatic amino acids, which we need to go on to produce our neurotransmitters. 95% of our neurotransmitters are created in the gut. If we block that shikimate pathway, we block a large portion of our body's ability to make our neurotransmitters. And again, tryptophan, tyrosine, phenylalanine makes a number of our neurotransmitters. Now, in order to make this, we need cofactors, things like zinc, iron, magnesium, B3, 6, B9, B12, so on and so forth. Without these, we cannot make our neurotransmitters. These grains, nuts and seeds, and other carb high content components, they contain lectins and phytic acid. And as you guys have heard me mention many times, phytic acid can block the absorption of zinc, iron, and magnesium by as much as 100%. So by consuming these compounds, which we are now hardwired to chase, we're in effect, we're blocking our body's natural ability to create these neurotransmitters. So in our pursuit to reach and make dopamine and serotonin, we're actually downregulating the pathways and inhibiting our body's excuse me, natural ability to make these neurotransmitters. It's a vicious circle. It's a vicious circle. So we cannot make these neurotransmitters. Now, these are essential. And all of this is so far has just come from bumped up cortisol. Can you see the cascade of events and how it can lead to disordered eating and this sugar addiction? So cortisol, incredibly powerful if we damage this HPA axis. Now, neurotransmitters, incredibly important, not just for dopamine and serotonin, but for heartbeat, blood pressure, breathing, heating, digestion, hormone regulation, so on and so forth. everything that we reach for in the supermarket contains these compounds, along with other addictive components like the vegetable oils and another what's the word I'm looking for? Emulsifiers, which are highly addictive and just drive us to continue to consume these components. Now, the issue with this is that it leads to what we know as insulin resistance. I'm not going to get into the terminologies in insulin resistance, but something we all recognize and understand as a basic terminology. Now, this leads to insulin resistance. Now, what this does to our hormones is it affects something called the kynurenine pathway. So in a normal circumstance, tryptophan goes on to create serotonin, which makes us feel good. Serotonin goes on to create melatonin, which helps us sleep. All of this makes us happy. We're happy. Now, the kynurenine pathway uses some of this tryptophan to create glutamate, which is the excitatory neurotransmitter. Some of it goes on to create the GABA, which is the calming part. So these work against each other. Think of like a seesaw. And it helps us create NAD, which is something that's a bit of a hot topic at the moment, which is something we're going to go into. But this state of insulin resistance, where we consume all of these sugary compounds, it pulls tryptophan. It pulls tryptophan down this kynurenine pathway, which basically blocks serotonin and therefore the further production of melatonin. So now we don't feel happy. Now we feel sad. Now we're depressed. We're feeling less sleep. So now it's affecting our health. Now this kynurenine pathway will increase glutamate. It will block NAD, which we're going to come back to, and it will downregulate GABA, which leads to something called glutamate excitotoxicity. Now, glutamate excitotoxicity causes a whole host of problems, including things like ALS, MS, Parkinson's, hypoglycemia, seizures, DNA damage, depression, and anxiety. All of these things are fueling into these same pathways, which are in effect fueling our cravings for more sugar, and we're caught in this vicious cycle, which is further increasing our cortisol, and it becomes this cycle that we cannot break, all of which affects our mental health. So it leads to sadness and low mood, like we've just mentioned, loss of interest or pleasure. So we don't want to do anything. Changes in appetite, which can lead to weight gain or weight loss. Sleep disturbances. So this is one of the reasons why some people will suffer with major sleep disturbances. Fatigue, loss of energy, difficulty concentrating and making decisions, feelings of worthlessness and excessive guilt, restlessness or slow movements. I can attest to all of these on a daily basis. I can attest to them, but not on a daily basis. Thoughts of death and suicide. I mean, as much as it saddens me to say, I've been there also. And all of this has come from what I believe to be damage to the pituitary, which damage to the HPA axis. And as a side note, I've put this in because I'm going to circle back to this. NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, is a coenzyme which is used for redox reactions. It's an integral part to energy metabolism and other redox-dependent enzymes, including sirtuins. Now, it directly impacts and affects DNA repair. So if we have low NAD, then we don't repair our DNA, and it affects our chromatin remodeling. Now, the chromatin is our DNA, which is wrapped around groups of proteins called histones, which this is really important. And remarkably, it's important for aging. So when we damage this pathway, we stop the production of NAD, which causes all of these things. And again, remember, all of this has just come from elevated cortisol. So the question is, what do we do? How do we repair this damage? So I think we can all attest to I guess all of us can attest to the things that I've just mentioned there at one time or another in our life. So this is what we do. We test our cortisol, and there are a number of tests that we can utilize. So we can do a blood test. A blood test will measure cortisol in that moment. But it's not good for the diurnal rhythm. So the diurnal rhythm is how the cortisol moves throughout the day, which is really important because we can show within range for one blood test, but we may be out of range for the rest. So we could be in a normal range, which is elevated cortisol in the morning, and then we might stay there for a prolonged period of time, which the next test won't tell, because blood tests are typically done in the morning. So hair is another good measurement. This is good for long-term assessment. It's non-invasive, and it gives us a long, good look at cortisol production, but it's less effective for hypocorticolism. It's less effective for low cortisol. So hair is fantastic for elevated, but it's not as effective for low cortisol. So we can test the urine, which is good for a 24-hour period. Again, it's good for hyper, but less effective for hypo. So less effective for low cortisol. We can do a stimulation test, which is where we visit the doctor and they will administer a synthetic adrenocorticotropic hormone, which will measure the pituitary and adrenal response. Obviously, you need to get this signed off by your doctor, and it's a bit of a laborious process. The one I would recommend, which is the one that you guys have heard me recommend many, many times, is a saliva test. This is easy, non-invasive, a great option for testing the diurnal rhythm. And basically, it involves you putting a sponge in your mouth for 2 minutes. You saturate it with saliva. You add it to a little test tube. You write the date and time on. This you've been sent by a testing company, by the way. You don't just put some random sponge in your mouth and put in random test tube. So they send you a test kit. So you do this when you wake in the morning, and then you do it around midday, and then around 4 p.m., and then around 8 p.m. or just before bed. So this will measure the diurnal rhythm, and it's a fantastic measurement that is done incredibly quickly. It's super easy. And it's around £89 on Medichecks. That's the company I use. I've got no affiliation. I don't earn anything off sending you to Medichecks. It's just the company I use. They haven't got a clue who I am. I just find it incredibly easy to do that. You can do it by the doctor, but it's just quick and easy to do it via Medichecks. So that's what I would recommend. Now, if the results have come back and your diurnal rhythm is affected, if you do have elevated or indeed low cortisol, what do we do? So there are a couple of options. I'm not a lover of medications, as you guys know, but I've put it in there for the sake, because I do believe that there's a place for medication, by the way. I believe medications are incredibly useful to address a problem in the short term. I think they can be incredibly beneficial, but again, we need to look at the root cause, which I'm going to go into, and that's going to be one of the last slides. How do we fix this damage that we've created in the first place? So see, these are some of the medications used for various types of cortisol problems, hypo and hyper, but most of them come with side effects, which most medications do. The prolonged consumption of medication is going to have a negative effect in the long term. So what about natural remedies? Well, there are lots, but most of these also come with side effects. So lots, ashwagandha is a popular one, but again, this is known to cause liver toxicity. All of these, bar a few, which I've shortlisted at the end, can cause some downstream deleterious effect if consumed for a prolonged period of time, like high blood pressure, so on and so forth. And to be honest, in my opinion, let me go on to the next slide so you can see the others. I think that in this case, the actual medication may be better. Now, this may sound incredibly stupid coming from someone who likes natural things. The reason I say this is that when we take a natural herb or spice or compound, plant in general, and we use that as a medication, it comes with a whole host of other plant toxins, hundreds of other compounds, which are going to cause problems within the body. The difference with the medication is that even though it may be synthetic, it's made to address that one thing. Yes, there are downstream effects, but there are side effects to consuming plant compounds also. That's not to put you off these natural remedies. I think there's a place for it. We've used these since the dawn of time, and I think they're incredibly important. But I'm certainly not against medication. If you came to see me as a client and said, Rich, I don't want to use a natural remedy, I want to use a medication, I wouldn't have a problem with that, because at least we're removing the hundreds of potential other damaging compounds which may cause effects. But if you do choose to use one, that's entirely your choice. But either way, whether it's medication or whether it's a natural remedy, addressing the root cause is key, because none of these we want to consume for long periods of time. So I put this in there. Ketones increase NAD. Now, again, I've kind of given the game away in regards to one of the processes involved with correcting this damage to the pituitary and increased cortisol. We saw earlier that damage to this HPA axis, and increased cortisol negatively affects NAD levels. Well, ketones increase it. Ketones increase NAD, which again will help with DNA production, sirtuin production, chromatin remodeling, and all those things that have been damaged. So ketones, whether through diet or through supplementation, can be incredibly important. And this is how they work. So when we become ketogenic, we increase the adenosine receptor. So adenosine binds to the receptor, and now it drives glutamate down, which was a problem because remember, this glutamate excitotoxicity has caused all of these downstream problems. Ketones help us alleviate this. It balances the glutamate to GABA ratio. So ketones, incredibly, incredibly beneficial. Coffee, which is something you guys know that I've recently quit. I'm not against anybody consuming coffee. I do think that it has its place, but we must remember that the overconsumption blocks the adenosine receptor and will further fuel this glutamate excitotoxicity. So in short, what I'm saying there is if you suffer with damaged HPA axis, damage to the pituitary, if you suffer with elevated cortisol, anxiety, and depression, coffee is not for you, or it's at least something that you want to actively try to remove because it is causing this increase in glutamate excitotoxicity, anxiety, depression, and all of those things that we listed, including suicidal thoughts and all sorts of nasty stuff. So there is a place for coffee, but if you do suffer severely with these things, then it's certainly something that you want to consider removing. Now, I've popped this in there for the sake of being ketogenic and the fact that we mentioned the chromatin. So this is the chromatin. It's the DNA wrapped around groups of proteins called histones. And all of these histones have little lysine tails. Now, they have a high affinity to certain compounds like HDACs and HATs. Our HATs are histone acetyltransferase. The HDACs are histone deacetylase. Now, one of these they're both beneficial in the right circumstance. I must add that. Anyone who is trained in epigenetics will know that both of these confer benefits depending on the time and the reason. But generally, what the HATs do is that they open the DNA. They allow the DNA open for expression and allow the body to create photocopies of the DNA, which basically leads to protein synthesis. And this is what heals and repairs the body. And this is really important because we need to supply the nutrients to the body in order to correct the damage that's being caused. So HATs will do this, and HDACs cause the chromatin to fold and cause problems. And things that will cause the HDACs to attach are things like grains and seed oils and excessive amounts of vegetables. And in fact, many vegetables have been shown to cause clastogenesis, and which basically means quite literally damage the DNA. So something to be mindful of, which I've presented in the last slide as we go. Now, ketone bodies inhibit histone deacetylase. Ketone bodies inhibit this chromatin from folding, which basically means that it opens the chromatin, allowing us to take those photocopies of quality sections of the best sections of our DNA, and these are sent to another part of the cell called the ribosome, which reads this DNA as it rides through the ribosome, and it reads the codons. The codons are sets of nucleotides. They come in sets of 3, and each set signals the attraction of an amino acid, and then another, and then another. And this builds into a peptide, which goes on to create a human protein. And it's this that heals and repairs every cell within your body: hair, skin, nails, kidneys, heart, liver, you name it. That's what happens. And it's ketones that contribute to the histone deacetylase, and therefore the opening and unfolding of the chromatin. So this is why keto is an incredible tool, which leads me on to the last 2 slides. So we've tested, we suffer with increased cortisol or low cortisol. How do we combat this? So I've put this together, and this is my little cheat sheet, incredibly super simplistic, but I've broken it down into 4 different subsections. So diet. So the keto diet, whether that's keto with some veg or whether it's a plant-free ketogenic diet, i.e. a carnivore diet, we need ketones. Ketones are incredibly important. If you're already on that journey, then you're already ticking one of the biggest boxes. because of all the reasons that we just mentioned with the increased NAD and the increased with the HATs. So we also need plenty of highly bioavailable animal proteins. So if you are not on a ketogenic diet, then we need high quality animal proteins. We need animal proteins. Plants are not going to cure this problem. And quite often, many vegans that I've worked with suffer with elevated cortisol and low cortisol because of the damage to this negative feedback loop, because of their many, many years of consuming these compounds and causing damage to this HPA axis, amongst many other things. So we need to gravitate towards highly bioavailable animal proteins. We also need natural fats, including but not limited to omega-3s, which was one of the things, if I remember correctly, that I put onto this omega-3 fatty acids. I've put generally safe there, but I mean, providing they're non-oxidized. And by non-oxidized, I mean from non-supplement sources. So this is omega-3s from natural sources, such as salmon, sardines, or mackerel. So omega-3s, so natural fats included, but not limited to omega-3s. We need all of the other saturated fats. Staying hydrated. This is key. This helps us repair damage to the HPA axis. So I've put down potential supplements that may help. Well, C8 and exogenous ketones, they can both increase ketones whether you are ketogenic or not. This can help repair the damage via the mechanisms that we've just mentioned. But again, you can do this by living the lifestyle. But if you want an extra kick, the supplements can help further increase these productions and pathways and help combat these things. Vitamin B5, which is a vitamin that doesn't get much airtime, which was another one, I believe, that is on the list somewhere. Where are we? I'm sure it's on one of the, there it is, vitamin B5. So vitamin B5, and again, I've put generally safe because if it's consumed in supplement form in high quantities, it can cause mild GI upsets. But, you know, ideally, we want to obtain this from natural sources, which I've put in there. Natural sources are things like liver, dark meats, egg yolks, and salmon. All of the things that we would typically consume living a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle. If you are living a carnivore-based lifestyle and you are living a lion diet, for example, then maybe we want to gravitate more towards lamb for the higher omega-3s and maybe think about implementing some organ meats potentially. If you can't do any of those, egg yolks, if you have an intolerance to the overmucoid in the eggs, then you can supplement with a good quality vitamin B5. But it is a vitamin that if we consume organ meats, we can obtain in plentiful quantities. But it is one that can be on the lower end of just a standard ketogenic lifestyle that it prioritizes the fat, and even in a basic carnivore lifestyle. So animal proteins, natural fats again, but actively try to make sure that we obtain plenty of B5. Sea salt, also super important. I think this is on the list as well. Sea salt. So there we are. It helps with sodium retention and helps with aldosterone. So again, I put generally safe. I mean, it is safe. It's essential for life unless you're very, very silly with salt. But consuming too much sodium is going to elicit responses, which is going to lead to a reaction far before it causes any problems within the body. It's going to make you feel sick, essentially. So it's very difficult to overconsume too much sodium. So exercise. Exercise, in my opinion, and this is varied within the community, I think it should be done ideally in the morning because exercise is a stressed state. So if we are going to stress the body, then I think it may be more beneficial to do it while cortisol is already bumped, rather than bumping it back out of this diurnal rhythm. Particularly if we are recovering from cortisol damage, pituitary damage. Now, if you're trained, i.e. if you are a person that trains a lot already, then take a short break because you're overtrained. If cortisol is damaged, when you train, again, like we mentioned earlier, the fight and flight response, we are increasing cortisol. We're trying to recover from this damage. So we don't want excessive amounts of this pathway being elicited. So if you suffer with damage, then stop training, have a break for a couple of weeks, do some meditation and grounding, which we'll come on to shortly. if you're new to training, if you've never done any training and you suffer with increased cortisol, well, it could be a time to start. And by that, I mean by slowly introducing low zone workouts. And I'm talking simple stuff to begin with, like yoga and general stretching. This is going to upregulate those natural pathways that we mentioned earlier that will allow us to combat the cortisol more efficiently. But being in a low zone, it's not going to overexpress like someone who's in a trained state is going to. So short exercise, it could be walking, for example, so, but we need to be careful that we keep within a low zone. And I'll explain what that is in a second. And once we've done that, we can introduce a variety of different workouts. So we can go walking, we could do yoga, we could do stretching, and we can start implementing other things, but we do it incrementally over a period of time, not just jumping straight into the deep end. But we need to limit the time to 60 minutes or less. If you're new, then start with 10 minutes, and then do that for a week or two, and then increment it by maybe 5 minutes and go to 15, and then 20, and then maybe 25 and 30 over a period of weeks and months until you get up to maybe 40, 45 minutes. 45 minutes, I think, is probably optimal, but we don't want to be going over 60 minutes. Rest is very important. The body needs to recover. So this isn't about just exercising and allowing the body to adapt. The central nervous system needs time to relax, and these pathways that produce cortisol and the HPA axis, they need time to recover. So we need to take a break. We need to have days off. Don't overtrain, again, especially if you were new to this. Now, other factors that have helped me massively, meditation, that's made a huge difference to me. And again, I'm not talking about sitting in a dark room on a cushion with crossed legs, going against and saying hum. I've never done any of that. If you want to do that, if that floats your boat, go for it. Now that's not the way that I've done it. What I've done, and I can't remember exactly how to word this because I haven't done it for a few weeks, but it's certainly something I need to get back to. I downloaded like a stopwatch on my mobile, and it was a gong which you can set to 20 minutes. And you push the start button every 5 minutes. It just does a slight little gong noise, and then it does the next one at 10 minutes, 15, and 20, and you're done. And what I do for the first 5 minutes is I start to think about all the things that are positive in my life, everything that I'm grateful for. And I know this sounds woohoo, but I promise it works. You start to think about, instead of focusing on the negative, think about all the things that you're happy, the things that you're proud of, your kids, things achievements that you've done, something that you're proud of within your life. You've run a marathon, or you saved someone's life, whatever. It's you look after your elderly gran every week, and nobody else in the family looks at. These are all positive things, and you focus this, and you put yourself in that moment, and you visualize that for 5 minutes, and then the gong will go, and then the next 5 minutes you start to focus on where you want to be in the next 5 years, for example. Where do you see your life going? Where do you want to go in the next 5 years? And you start to think, well, this is where I want to be. And you work it backwards in your mind, and you just visualize. It could be anything. It could be like, I want to run a marathon. I want to be a millionaire, or whatever. It really doesn't matter, right? Because I promise you, if you can visualize something, and I promise this works, as stupid as it sounds, you will put things in place subconsciously that will make it happen. And I promise you, I've done this with my business. Where are we? That side. I can't even see where my hand is. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I've been homeless, and I don't know if many of you guys know this, but I was homeless for a period of time because I quit my job. I put everything into my business. I was broke, in an awful lot of debt. And for a period of time, I slept under the desk in my office because I didn't have a home. I was literally homeless. I was classified as homeless, I guess. I've been rock bottom, and I believe in what I do. I believe that nutrition is key to everything. I believe that living this lifestyle allowed me to find a secret, and I want to tell the world about my secret. This is why Stephen and this is why we go live every Sunday. This is why we set up the SKOOL group. And we do YouTube for free. And again, obviously, we've got SKOOL, which you guys pay for, which we massively appreciate. And it just helps take that sting out of the costs in order to do this. Because it takes an awful lot of time to create content, to create a video, a podcast. I worked out this week that I probably spend 4 days a week creating content, which I don't get paid for. During that time, everybody else is earning money. This is why I need to work the other 3 days. This is why I work 7 days a week, is in order to earn money, in order to allow me to, and Steve's the same, in order to do these things that we do, which we love. But my point to this is that I had a goal in setting up my business. I had a goal in, and I'll give you a very simple one. Last year, or the year before, I said to Steve that I want to be on stage in public speaking events. I want to be on stage speaking at events. I want to build up to being paid to travel abroad, to cover my costs, to go to speak. And I want to be on stage with some of the biggest names in the business. Now, going back 2-3 years ago, nobody knew who Stephen and I were. We were nobodies within the industry. Not that we're anything, far beyond that now. But my point is that, like, this was something that was impossible. And this is what I actioned when I meditated. I said to Steve, this is what I want, and this is what I visualized. And I visualized it. I visualized being in a different country, in the sun, on a stage, speaking in front of rooms full of people, sharing the stage with world-leading nutrition experts and doctors and so on and so forth. And last year was the first. Phil Escott invited me to speak at an event, the first event that I spoke at that I was paid to go to. I'd done lots of other events prior to this, but they're events that I had organized for free and done for, athletic clubs and for the NHS and things that I'd done for free. But that was the first event that I was paid to do. And then that opened the floodgates. I was asked to speak at lots of other events. I was fortunate enough to be invited to speak at the Keto Brain Health. And in that moment, I was on stage with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, Dr. Zoe Harcoom, Ivor Cummins, Dr. Rachel Brown. Stephen was there working on the documentary, which was part of his sort of 5-year plan. Everything that I wanted came to fruition. And guess what? That day, that event in Manchester, that night, I had to pack up because I was catching a flight at 5 a.m. the next day, being flown. It's been a long day. Being flown over to Spain to speak at another event, again with Dr. Chaffee. Who else was there? Phil Escott was there. Ben Hunt was there. Who am I thinking of, Steve? Oh, my goodness.
Sarah Pugh?
That's Sarah Pugh, Dr. Sarah Pugh. And who else was there?
Natasha McBride?
No, Natasha's come in this year.
Oh, right. Okay.
There was the lady that does the things with cancer and ketones. It's been a long day. Oh, my goodness.
Georgia Reed?
No. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Oh, no. Dr. Rachel Brown.
No, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Anyway, losing momentum. My point is, these things were not ever going to happen. And then they began to happen. Other goals I've set with my business in regards to wanting to be the #1 keto electrolyte. And last year, Dr. Abs recognized mine as #1 in the world. My electrolytes are now #1 on Amazon under low carb keto electrolytes. And last year, the last few months, we managed to get to #3 in the UK under just an electrolyte search term. We are being recognized now as the world leading product manufacturer in regards to electrolytes. My MCT oil is the world's highest purity by certification, and so on and so forth. These things that I've manifested, they are happening. And these are things that we're going up against titans within the industry. These things are happening. And this year, I'm again doing all of these things, lots and lots of events, and I'm traveling to even more countries. So I promise you, this manifestation, when you meditate, actually works. So this is what you do for those 5 minutes. You visualize where you want to be. And it could even be, I just want to be, I want to be happy. It could be as simple as this, simple as that. Because once you set that goal, you start to put things in place. And then like the last 5 minutes, and I've missed a 5-minute chat out in this, and I cannot remember what it is for the life of me, but I will let you know in the next live that we do. The last 5 minutes of the meditation, you just let your mind do what it wants. And that's it. It's 20 minutes a day. and you can sit anywhere. You can lay on your bed, on your sofa, whatever. I promise you, this is an incredibly powerful tool, not just to help with cortisol, but for life in general. I promise you, you can be whatever you want to be, and I promise you that. I can't emphasize that enough. Incredible tool. Grounding, Dr. Sarah Pugh, massive fan of grounding. She's opened my eyes to many things. Stephen's introduced me to lots of grounding techniques. Incredibly beneficial. Anytime you can, get your feet on the ground. If you can't, then see if you can get a grounding sheet. Incredibly beneficial, even if it means just going outside, out the back garden, feet on the grass for 5 or 10 minutes. Any opportunity you get, walking on the beach, try to do some grounding. More important than that, and probably more easier to obtain, is natural light. Get out in the light. It doesn't have to be sunny. You just get out anytime you can, ideally in the early in the morning and later in the evening when the sun is lowest in the sky. So the UVA is incredibly important to the eyes. So you need to go out without the sunglasses. And I'm not saying to stare at the sun. Don't go staring at the sun. But just get out. Just take your shades off for 5 or 10 minutes. Get some UVA to the eyes, because this will increase things like melanocyte-stimulating hormone and cholecystokinin. All of these things have benefits in hormone regulation, satiety signaling. All of these will help those cravings, which will in turn help with the cortisol management. So natural light, super important. Quality sleep. And I know that's easier said than done, but if you do the meditation, or the manifestation, whatever you want to call it, just before bed, this will make you sleepy. So what I do, I get ready for bed. I lay on the bed. I lie on my back. I can't sleep on my back, so I never end up sleeping on my back. But I lay on my back, and I put a little blanket over me, because I like to be nice and cutched. I like to be, that's a Welsh term. Cuddled is the term everybody else would be familiar with. I like to be nice and cutched in my little blanket. And I'll play this meditation thing with this gong stuff, and I'll do this meditation manifestation. And by the end of the 5 minutes, I'm actually tired, and it's so easy just for me to turn over and go to sleep. And again, it's not a miracle cure, but I promise that it can help, and it does work. Other things that I've used to help me sleep is high frequency meditation music, all sorts of different frequencies. You can pick whichever one. You just go onto YouTube. So you go onto your mobile, open up YouTube, type in high frequency meditation music. There'll be a whole host of different frequencies, and you can pick whichever one you want, and it'll tell you what they do. Like 777 will be for, like, I don't know, DNA repair, for example, or whatever. I can't remember, but you pick which one you want, and you move your mobile away from the bed. And this is another important thing that you can do. Your bedside table, move it further than an arm's reach away. And I know it defeats the object of a bedside table, but that's what I put my mobile. But I want my mobile to be just far enough away. Ideally, you don't want your mobile in the bedroom with you. If you can do that, even better. But if you struggle with sleep and you need to listen to this meditation music, you can have it on your mobile, but have it away from the bed, so you're not being affected by the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi and anything else that's going on with the mobile. You can put it on to you can turn all the other apps off if you wanted to, but that's really important. If you wake in the night, don't look at your mobile as what's the word I'm looking for? Not urging. What's the word? As much as you feel like you want to look at your phone, it's such a technical term. Resist, because the blue light will come on, and this will wake you up, because blue light is for the day. So this is why we wear blue blockers in the night. So try not to look at your phone when I know it's really awkward. You wake up, you don't know what time it is. You want to say, how long have I got left in bed? Don't look at your phone. Just go to the toilet, have a pee, whatever it is you want to do. If you're hungry, go and grab some cheese out of the fridge, whatever. That's what I do. If I feel hungry, I grab a piece of beef, I eat an egg or something, piece of cheese, and I go back to bed, and that's me. I'm out like a light. All of these things are incredible tools. There's one other app that I listen to. I do really well with, not an app, sorry, on YouTube. I do really well with violent thunderstorms. So I search for violent thunderstorms, and I play one of them, and I put it on loud, so it sounds like it sounds like there's a storm outside. It sounds like there's rain hammering against the window, and you can hear the thunder crackling. That puts me to sleep like that. Honestly, try it. It may not work for you, but it's the best thing. And my little girl even uses it now. So she puts it on. If she's like, oh, Daddy, I can't see it, I'll walk into her room in the middle of the night and I'll just hear this thunder and lightning going. And it's like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? The neighbors must think, what the hell is this family doing? But it works incredibly well for me. So look, those are my hints and tips. And I know some of these sound incredibly simple, and most of you know them all. But by pulling some of these levers, it can help repair the damage to this HPA axis. It can help us combat cortisol. But we need to try to avoid the modern stresses, the stresses in modern life. From an evolutionary perspective, we would have, the only stress we'd have had is making sure that we weren't caught by the nearest animal that was trying to kill us, and to try to find our food. And that's the stress we had to put up with, getting back to the cave or whatever, keeping warm. But today we are in this environment in which we are stressed continuously. From the second we wake in the morning, the alarm goes off, we're stressed. And then it's like, oh my God, I've got to get ready for work. And then we're rushing, we're trying to wake the kids up because we've got to take them to school. And this is exactly me, by the way. And then I'm pouting and shouting at my little girl because she won't get out of bed, and then she's going really slow, putting her socks on. It's like, come on, get up. Doesn't matter what time I wake her up. She just seems to go even slower if I wake her up 10 minutes earlier. And she just seems to just sit there unless I go in and just give her another nudge. And then it's brushing her hair, brushing her teeth. And then I'm stressing because I'm late leaving, and then we're late getting to the school, and then the gate's closed, and I got to ring the bloody buzzer for the teacher to come. And it's so embarrassing because they come out like, why are you late? And all this. And then I'm stressed. And then I'm late, so I'm hitting the traffic. And just by being 2 minutes late from leaving my school, the traffic is a nightmare. And now I'm going to be late for work, and now I'm stressing because of this. And my life is just a stress ball. Everybody's is the same. And it's like, we need to combat stresses. So, when I'm driving to work, I'll put the meditation music on. I'll listen to some songs or something that I want, some songs that get me really upbeat and get my blood pumping, but allow me to de-stress. Some songs that make me feel good. So I listen to them on the way into the office in the morning, for example, and I'll start to put things in place. Like I'll try not to look at the computer screen too late at night, but incredibly difficult when we do the lives, obviously. I do have blue blockers, but I can't get on with them. I think they're brilliant if you can use them, but they don't work. Yeah,
I can't get on with them.
So I mean, it's a what's the thing I'm looking for? I mean, it's one of the negatives, I guess, to doing what we do, Steve. Isn't it? It's an occupational hazard. But we do try to negate those things. So we need to actively remove the stresses in our lives. If we don't get on with certain people, remove them from your life. Remove the black holes. And I know that's easier said than done. You can't do it so much with family. It's I have done with some, but I know it's more difficult with family. But look, if you have a friend, and you have one of those friends, and we've all got them. You see your friend, and it's like, oh, how are you doing? Yeah, good. Yeah. Oh, you never guess what? And bang, they hit you with their buddy. This end of the world story that's just happened to them, and it's every time you see them, it's the end of the world. Something really negative's happened, and they always look at the glass being half empty. There's always something going wrong. And when you go to see them about your problems, to offload with your problems, they flip it round. Oh, I know what you mean, because this other time I went to this thing and this happened to me, and they put it back on themselves. These people are black holes, and I hate to say it, but you need to remove, or try to remove, these negative people, these black holes from your life, because they suck your energy. Life is about an exchange of energies. It's about passing on something in exchange for something else. And that's what life is. It's an exchange of energies. When you are around these negative people, there's no exchange. All they do is take your energy, and you're left with nothing. And if you work in the health industry, you'll find if you work with sick people, you'll find that you are incredibly stressed and low energy constantly, because you're giving. The sick people don't give back. So you need to look for other outlets. You need to surround yourself with positive people who are going to give you energy. And that's what it is. It's an exchange of energies. Actively try to put things in place that are going to allow you to feel happy. Open the window, move your desk around in the office so you're closer to the sunlight. Open the window. If you're not able to have direct sunlight, open the window anyway, as long as it's not too cold, because light will refract. When you're driving your car, crack the window open if you can, because the light will come in, it will refract even if you're not in direct sunlight. Try to make your workspace and your home a comfortable environment to work in, somewhere where you want to be, not somewhere where you get back and you think, oh my God, I've got to clean up after you again. There's dishes everywhere. So try to put things in place that will, what I do is I incentivize my daughter. So I've set her up on a Go Henry app, which is an app that I pay her. But this sounds awful. I pay her to do little jobs around the house. So if she wakes up in the morning and makes her bed, like she earns 10 pence or something, like, and it sounds awful. 10 pence, you tight get. It does add up, I promise. If she eats a piece of meat, then she gets 10 pence or whatever. It might be 50 pence. I can't remember. If she tidies her room once a week, she gets like £1 or something. And all of these little things, if she does her homework and she does them and she comes and shows me and I tick them off in the app and the money goes into her little account and she's got a little card. She's got her own little card and there's like money, and then she'll go to the shop or whatever when she's with friends and she's got her own little card. So this has given her the sense of achievement and responsibility. But it's also helping me keep the house clean and keep me away from being so stressed because now she's pulling her weight, for example. So it's little tips like this that has allowed me to overcome the damage to my pituitary, which made me incredibly well. And as much as I hate to say it, none of you probably noticed when I was going through this. I hid it incredibly well, but going back sometime last year, I was in a very, very dark place. And it is doing this that allowed me to repair the damage to my pituitary. And now I'm back fighting at, I wouldn't say 100% because I'm absolutely exhausted after the day I've had today. But on a positive note, so turning that negative into a positive, I've been super busy today because I've been inundated with consultations. So that's a good thing. So even though, it's exhausting, talking to people, and again, it's that exchange of energies, learning and bouncing off each other, helping other people, all of these things basically increases my energy and allows to get me through my day. So that's the presentation that I threw together about 20 minutes before coming on the call. So I hope that was any good.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Of course it was. And generated some questions in the chat. I've answered some of them, but I think one in particular, Gary, who was really keen to come to this, had to leave, I think. So Nicholas has put, I think Gary, who had to leave the class too early, wanted to ask about DHEA supplementation, possibly helping with elevated cortisol management. He has read that it does.
Yeah, again, potentially that's another option. The DHEA, it works almost against cortisol. So it's something you can test for. So before supplementing with that, you can test for that also. So that's another test that you can do. You can test for DHEA. So if your cortisol is fine, test your DHEA. You can supplement. So yeah, probably another one that potentially we could have added to the list, but it's not one that I implemented. I did.
Yeah, and I'll clarify that if you do have a test and you're not low, then don't supplement with it, because then you have too much and then you get some side effects that aren't great. So yeah, that's a good question. I think everyone really enjoyed it. Everyone seemed to be on the edge of their seat. I know your stormy nights and eating beef didn't sound like the most relaxing night.
But it's unbelievably relaxing. It's like it's like, I don't know, I built a conservatory in the house that I used to live in, and I would go into that conservatory when it was raining just to listen to the rain smashing against the windows, because I found it so therapeutic. And I'm sure many of you can attest to that rain against the window. Like, I love it when it hails and it just puts me straight to sleep. Maybe it's not for everybody, but
no, I like storms. I like storms. I think they're very interesting, and I maybe this is something to do with my hearing, but I actually find them very relaxing. But then I don't hear them full on. It's just a gentle patter of rain against the glass. Anyway, I'll stop the recording now and the transcript. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I'll try and get this onto SKOOL within the next sort of 48 hours. It is difficult because obviously